non-student group.
Great. And how many people are over there in Nash, in beautiful Nash Hall?
2 or 3.
Okay, great.
And then other students attend remotely individually.
Oh, cool, cool, great. Perfect. Well, welcome everybody this morning here and over there and wherever you are. My name is Shawn Rowe. I am the Sea Grant Professor of Free Choice Learning down here at Hatfield, and what that means is that, so I'm a linguist by training and a psychologist, developmental psychologist. And I used to study how people learned second languages, foreign languages, living in a place, not in school, because you don't learn very well in school, it turns out, a lot of things in your life. So I used to study how people learned languages in sort of their everyday life, and that turned into a fascination with how people learned anything in their everyday life, science in particular. And so for the last 15 years, I've been here at OSU, at Hatfield primarily, using the visitor center out here as my lab, doing research on how families learn together, how kids learn in school and in field trips and out-of-school settings, how adults learn in citizen science programs, basically any kind of learning that happens outside of your traditional spot. And that includes how professionals learn. And the work, I've been doing this talk for a bunch of years now, and I do it several times a year, at various versions of it. And everything I'm going to tell you is based on that kind of research, the research that we do or that others do around human perception and learning, and what that can tell us about communicating more effectively. And so the stuff that's in here is, some of it's kind of just best practices, but you can find a lot of stuff online about best practices for poster design. I have a little bit of that, but what I really try to focus on is what research tells us about human beings as learners and how you can leverage that to make a better communication product. So that's really my approach and sort of my background for that approach. Susan Rowe is an environmental sciences PhD candidate. She's actually defending December 6th, which is one of the reasons she's not here co-presenting with me, because she's finishing up her dissertation and her just started a new job. But she helped develop some of this as well and does lead these talks in addition. Any questions before we get going from anybody online or in here?
I'm watching the online group.
Great, thanks. So what I'll do is, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put up some actual examples of scientific posters just to kind of orient us and get your take, kind of first blush take on them, and then we'll launch back into the actual presentation of information. But it's the last several times I've done this, I've found it kind of useful to start with some examples. And I'm not going to make a claim about whether the examples are good or bad at this point. I'm going to let you kind of talk about them. There it is over there. Boom. So I have blocked out the names of the authors and the institution affiliations, et cetera, to protect the innocent or guilty. But what I want you to do is take a look at this poster in a broad sense. Don't worry about the text right now. I'm trying to read the text. Just in terms of its layout and its look and its design, and give me a couple of examples of things you like or don't like about it, or that you think work or don't work about it. Anybody? Yeah.
I like the layout, but I don't like that it doesn't have, I guess, section titles to help guide me through the layout.
I am not a host.
Okay.
Okay, I'm a host. Okay, can they hear that? Can you guys hear that online? Hear the comments from the room? Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it's kind of an interesting layout. It's kind of clear, but it doesn't have the kind of typical or even atypical section headings. So signposts.
Kind of feels like there's too much negative space, drawing kind of too much attention to that.
Okay, great.
That's what I think.
Okay, same thing. There's a lot of empty space here.
Yeah.
Great. I'll come back to this one and talk about that empty space in a little bit. Yeah.
I was also going to comment on the empty space and also
a
lot of colors, a little distracting.
So maybe a little too much color and a lot of font change.
There's also a lot of distractions going on. So you have preliminary results, families at the touch tank. Maybe you can just put families at the touch tank somewhere else and just have results as a bold statement so it's easy to find.
Mm-hmm. Great. Anything else for look at another one?
There's something else online.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brooke. You're
Oh, I was everyone was kind of touching on all those points that I was thinking of them, but I'll also just the background, having the background as a specific photo without like overlaying kind of solid color spaces where all the text would be. I think that would make it more clear. Also, the fact that there's a bunch of text that's different colors, that's a bit confusing. There's not an obvious flow to the poster itself, even if there continue to be no headings. I feel like the flow is it's a little hard to figure out where the main points are because it's all scattered.
Great. Right. Let's see. So the last time I did this, I actually had people vote using an online voting system. That's what that is. Okay. How about this one? This one's on also on animal touching examples. Any thoughts?
Way too much text.
Very disorganized.
There's a lot of text. There's the organization is not immediately clear.
Kind of goes in with the too much text, but it's also too small to like read.
Yes, it's way too small to read.
They have some nice, it looks, I can't actually read figures that they have could be really useful, so maybe increasing those with reducing the amount of text and size so you could actually be able to read it, but use the figures for the purpose of learning it as well.
So some nice use of figures that are actually pretty clear, and some data and results that are pretty clearly laid out, but you can't find them in the middle of it all.
Yeah, if somebody handed me a magnifying glass, then I'd be able to read it.
Yeah.
But it's also got like a 4-paragraph abstract.
Yeah, I wouldn't even write that for a paper.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
It's sort of gone beyond the level of abstract. And then in addition to that, there's this very long introduction.
For some reason, the abstract and introduction have exclamation text. Are those exclamation points?
Yes, there are exclamation points at the end instead of colons or something, which they don't all have.
Yeah, it's just those two.
Yeah. There's also this discussion implications, which is long enough for an actual paper.
Yeah.
How close is the size of this to the hard copies, poster size?
Well, it'd be about like that, because this is, these are printed 3 by 4, so it would be about this size in reality.
I feel like it would God.
Maybe a little bit bigger. Okay.
Please don't do this for your class.
Yeah, don't do that. All right. Here's another one on the same topic. Well, slightly on the same same content area. All right, what about this one?
The abstract's at the bottom.
Yeah, this is interesting. The abstract, I can tell you that the abstract's at the bottom of this because that was a requirement of the conference for this particular paper.
But the abstract has more words in it than the rest of the poster does.
There you go.
It's got this weird, like, space.
I know that too.
Yeah.
This right here.
Yeah.
Weird glow in the middle of the paragraphs too.
Okay, you noticed that. It's sort of,
Yellow.
this sort of weird yellow.
Highlight just the middle.
I don't think that's bad, yeah.
It's kind of like fading in.
Appearance.
All of the footers on the graphs are interesting, especially because 3 of them have footers and then the last 2 graphs don't have anything at all.
Yeah, so these 2 need explanation, but these 2 you can figure out on your own. Yeah.
Yeah, because it looks like they wanted to combine results in discussion, and they shouldn't have, it would be better if it was separate, like with small footers under the graph, and then a discussion.
So what it appears is that they're actually using the
Right.
figure,
As a discussion.
the figure captions as the discussion. Yeah, I think you're right.
Is it possible to do that?
It's not a very good idea. I would say it's actually a really bad idea. But you certainly can make double use of a figure caption like that.
And like we've been saying, all of these seem to be very small words. If that's the full size, I mean, that's a pretty small word.
Yeah, I think this one would be bigger because
It has to
it
get a little closer.
had to be squished to get on
Yeah,
here.
that's true. And then I guess my other point is just that, you know, I mean, I guess these are intended to be a lot more standalone. I mean, the abstract, I feel like those are almost those, like, if you have to give the whole spiel in 2 minutes, that might be everything you would say in that abstract. But it's hard for me to believe that someone would get really close and lean forward and read that
Especially where it's located.
if you're
on
not
the
there
yeah.
to talk about it.
I agree.
I do like, I think this, lower left-hand box, it says examples of ecological talk,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like quotes from people.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of cool, but I would have just like chosen a few of those and made them bigger somewhere else, just to give like a really good example of what the actual study was about.
And like on some of those, the first line is 3 times the length of the rest of the line, so by narrowing the width of the box, you could use way less space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this poster kind of reminds me of Anna's project, because she'll be doing surveys, and she might like to put quotes, but I would definitely not recommend, like, having 3 conversations transcripted that way. But maybe a quote or something,
Yeah.
one powerful quote
Yeah,
would make
sure.
a lot
Or
more
like
emphasis
yeah.
than, yeah.
Blow it up a little bit.
Yeah, something like that, maybe, might work. Depends on how it's done.
I agree. All right, I think I have 2 more.
Okay.
Okay, this one has pretty standard headings, and this is actually a template that's used pretty widely. You can get it online. A lot of people use this template at a lot of conferences.
I'm gonna let you guys go first, but.
Likes, don't likes.
I've never seen, I mean, I've been looking at, I haven't seen tons of posters in my life, but just from this, past couple of weeks, I've never seen a poster with a group photo on it. I don't know if that's like relevant.
Yeah. I think there's no reason to use it unless it is relevant for some reason.
Let's have a short summary and then an abstract
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a
It's supposed to be
literally short summary and then an abstract with keywords. Yeah, so it has all the, and then the methods are quite kind of curtailed there.
Is that like a sick child in the bottom middle?
It's hard to tell what this is.
Grabs the attention.
Yes, it's very attention grabbing, but not clear exactly what that is.
Do you remember Mark Farley's presentation? Is it like from one of the cameras that?
No, this is actually somebody's phone shot. This is a tsunami inundation. This kid's in the water, trying to get out of the water from a tsunami.
It's awful.
Yes, this is about tsunami preparation on the coast, and that's an actual photo from the Indonesian tsunami. I know, so it's very eye-catching. It grabs your attention, and it's positioned in a very powerful way. I'm not sure what it does other than that in the poster.
I was going to comment on, it seems kind of blurry, but is that just because it's up on the screen and?
I think it's because of because of the cut and paste or just the photo, however it was captured. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't printed that way.
Okay, good.
The text still seems very small.
Yep.
Even if it wasn't blurry, I don't know
Yep.
how well I can read it.
Yep.
And the picture on the top left, that map,
Uh-huh.
the United States, is the same as the one in the background?
Yes, it is, as a matter of fact. Yes, this photo that's back here is that photo there.
It just seems like a really busy photo, and then you can't really see any of the details anyway. Kinda.
Yeah, seems like using the map for the background is kind of odd. It seems like it's trying to display information, like I don't know if those are volcanoes or.
But you can't really see it.
Can't tell what they are, yeah.
And then why use the whole United States if you're only looking at the West Coast? I'm not really sure, maybe they're not.
Keywords, put the map there.
Mm-hmm.
Third graphic in the middle column, it almost seems like it was just pasted on top of everything. It's kind of a
This
little
one?
bit writing on top of the.
Oh, yeah, yeah, the way it's dropped in
Oh,
there.
yeah. And then the yellow outlines of the bordering the figures in the section below that, they're kind of uneven and odd.
Yeah. I might also say with that graph that you were talking about, Alex, the colors of the bars are not very distinguishable, especially at that size.
Yep.
So maybe a different color scheme for that.
That awareness and activities on the right-hand side is kind of not that helpful.
It's like the awareness is centered, but the activity is still to the left.
It just feels like it's like, I gotta fill this space, quick, let's put something
Uh-huh,
in there.
yeah, and I think there's something to that. I have to fill the space.
What is Dave doesn't knock my socks off.
Yeah, color schemes.
Yeah, color schemes. are
Yellow
really
and yellow and
phenomenal.
yellow.
I do have two more. I have this one and one more. This one got an award, by the way, I will say that.
Well, for content or for design?
I don't know. It got a best poster award, and so, at a conference.
You shouldn't have led with that, you should have let us pick it apart first.
Yeah, no, I'm just, you certainly should feel free to take it apart anyway. So again, things you like and don't like about this one.
Like whatever this business is with the arrow, like the work,
In the column.
yeah.
I
So
feel like
drawing explicit attention from a claim to the evidence for that claim.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think maybe it wasn't as well organized as it should have been if you have to go through your columns and then go back from that to the other. Like it kind of loops, makes a little circuitous path of your flow.
Not sure what the orange box is. Like
Draws a lot of attention.
it does draw attention because of the color, but then it's really small.
I feel like everything's just naturally small in this,
Yes.
based on like.
But it is better organized,
Yeah.
almost, you know? The space between the
Justified.
columns gives a little bit of, it gives a little bit of, breathing room almost between creates the illusion of space, I don't know. But then everything inside is very cramped,
Yeah,
so it's hard to say that
So I
it's
would
any
say,
better.
yeah, I would say it is exactly the illusion of space. It's the same template as the last one, by the way.
The headlines are really clear and easy to follow.
Yeah, easy to find this
I
section.
do follow a really nice logical progression.
Great.
I do like that they don't just say, introduction, method, results, conclusion. You can change those settings and not have them necessarily be those same perfect. I also like that they do put a lot of faces up there in the right-hand corner. Although the composite is, all of them are so lovely to see.
I have a feeling this is probably all the female scientists at the
Yeah.
National Center for Atmospheric Research is probably what
Could be,
that is.
some look like they might.
There's crisp distinctions between the introduction, the findings, the response, and the summary.
I feel like I want to read this one more closely because I'm curious as to why there are graphs and figures right at the introduction instead of all bulked into one
Yeah,
area,
nice.
Yes,
I think
But I want to
the
read it
evidence
more
is,
closely, like maybe there's a reason for that.
there's evidence spread in each section, which is,
Yeah.
which is unusual sometimes.
Very cool.
Cool. All right, let's take one more and then we'll move on.
Very different.
Yeah, it's one that shows because it is very different.
All the text is larger than any of the ones we've seen. It seems
Yeah.
so much crisper.
The text is crisper and easier, and you can actually read it even in this size,
Better contrast.
at distance, better contrast, great use of colors, I think, for the most part. There's a lot of images, contextualizing images. There is data and evidence.
There's still some spots where it's hard to read, like the species response in the center and like under title zone, high daily variability.
Some of the lighter colors, like the yellows, so it's hard to read.
Yeah.
I feel like the italics is kind of overkill too.
same with some of the colors over pictures. It's just like, it's too much.
But so there's a lot of figures which draws you in, but then the graph is tiny. The results
Yeah,
are
the
tiny.
actual data is really small over here.
Well, I mean, the one up above is better, where there's at least proportionate brittle star picture to the graph in the quadrant above, but I'm kind of like, the one below is just tiny. You can barely see it.
Be a great present.
It would make a good Prezi, I agree with that.
What's down there in the bottom left? Super tiny.
These are all the,
1, 2, 3, 4.
these are all the participating organizations. It's that stuff that people usually what people do is splash their, their logos across the top. So this is just the organizations involved.
And I'm assuming this is one of the conferences where they require you to put a picture of yourself on the top left.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Where
Potentially.
that reference is.
These are, well, this is a reference, this is, oh, no, I guess they are, they're papers, I'm sorry, they're actual papers.
It just looks
That's
like
what they are.
it's the heading of
Yeah,
the science.
it does, but yeah, that is right there, these are,
Actual titles.
yeah, they're titles,
Interesting.
sorry. Yeah, I can't see it very well in there either.
I like the hypothesis is obvious.
Yep.
I might appreciate like a little bit more of an summary or objectives or introduction. Like, yeah,
A little more
a
context.
little bit.
Yeah. I feel like this is less standalone. If someone's standing there explaining to you, they can give you all of that, but by itself, you have to find your own way a little bit more. And then I like that you are where you live, but it's all the way at the bottom. That's kind of less emphasized that way. I feel like that's more of a
The
take-home
tagline. Yep,
message.
that's exactly what it is, I think. I think what's interesting about this one is, this one solves the problem of summarizing a large amount of work in a poster, right? So this is not one paper being presented or one research project being presented. Right,
That's
this
the 1,
is-
2, 3, 4.
Yeah, so this is a
One,
set
two, three,
of,
four,
this is a body of
Those are the 4
research,
papers.
right, being clarified. And
That's
so I
actually
think
really
that's,
smart.
that's a nice, it solves several problems at once very nicely. Yeah. All right, cool, there we go, let's stop with those. That's mainly to get you in the mindset, and I'll just note 2 things. Your responses to the posters were based on 2 kind of large things. One is just the aesthetics of it, the way it looks and feels to you. The other is on the you had a lot of comments about the posters adherence to kind of communicative norms for natural science, right? Is it doing what I think it should do as a natural scientist or as a piece of science communication? And those kinds of rules for what counts in the genre is a hugely important part. And each of you has criteria for those things that you have to live up to. So if you're in biological sciences versus the oceanographic sciences versus like me, the psychological sciences, there's sort of individual field or disciplinary kind of expectations for what goes into the poster and how to communicate. Those you know about or need to know about or can access by thinking about the journals you are trying to publish in or looking at, or the posters you see at your conferences. So I'm not going to talk about that so much, what's required for good biology communication. Instead, I'm going to focus on the kind of the layout, the presentation, and some, again, the cognitive work that happens in somebody's head when they walk up to your poster, and how you can leverage that. Okay, and I always start these talks with this, because I think what happens 100% of the time with working scientists and half the time with graduate students is that what you do is you start here, and you work that way. You say, oh, I got to put together a poster for the class or for the conference. What have I got? And, what template have I got? What data have I got? What have I already got? So what poster have I already built? What can I steal from that I've already done? And then we work that way toward, an end point. And that will make for a confused looking poster at the end of the day, no matter what you do, or a curriculum or a lecture or anything, public talk. start here and really think about that, because a poster can do a lot of work for you and a lot of different kinds of work. It can communicate content, which it needs to do, but often when you're at a conference or something like that, presenting a poster, for you it may be about getting a job, right, as opposed to just communicating your work. And so one outcome may be the presentation of yourself as a professional, as much as making sure people understand my content. It may be about something else. It may be about getting a group of policy people to change their mind or make a change in a policy. And the look of your poster would be different based on those things. And so really identify that and kind of prioritize those things. From that will help you, because I think you all noticed that most of these posters just have too much information in them, more than you can ever get through. They just cause fatigue to the viewer, basically, at the end of the day. And you'll see this, I'm going to say this over and over again, less is more in these visual presentations of information. And so sort of identifying exactly which evidence really will help you get to that goal is crucial, right? So which piece of evidence is really going to speak to me as a professional? Which piece of evidence is really going to speak to the quality of my work here? Which piece of evidence is going to speak to a policy person or a member of the public? And line those up and then build the poster around that. This is just called backwards design. It's kind of typical in curriculum design, and then like when we build exhibits, this is how we approach it. Okay, that helps explain some of this poster. And this poster still has some significant flaws. I hate photos in the background, personally. I think they're just distracting. They really don't do anything. And Dan Cutter hates them because they waste ink. Huge amounts of ink in the plotter go to printing that photo. These big empty spaces, though, served a purpose for the person who put this together, which was a data collection purpose. So at this particular conference, the author wanted to collect data from professionals about how they organize their thinking. And so there were sticky notes for them to build concept maps in these areas, right? And so they did that. And each time they did it, took a picture of it, and that was data collection for her. How do professionals organize their thinking in these concept areas? Because then she's comparing that to how families and learners do the same. So these big empty spaces serve a purpose based on the goal of the poster. As a standalone, it's kind of problematic and it looks weird, but in terms of the need and the goal of the day, it works. So think about your poster that way again and judge it that way. How many of you have presented posters at conferences? Just a couple of people. This is the experience, right? This is an engineering conference at Penn State. This is the Visitor Center on Marine Science Day. I have presented posters at all kinds of conferences. My favorite is going to AGU, the American Geophysical Union in San Francisco, where there are 12,000 posters on display. And at the end of each long line of posters is a keg of beer. And scientists are literally walking back and forth from the kegs of beer trying to find friends, right, and meet them, and maybe stumble across a poster that's interesting. It's almost impossible. Your poster has to jump out in these contexts, in these settings. And it has to speak quickly and efficiently in these settings. And you're there, and you're an important part of the poster, but you're not there for the whole time. You can't be talking to everybody. So you can't rely on you to kind of be the context. But you also can't rely on your poster to do everything for you, because it won't. It just can't in these settings. Okay. One other kind of thing that's going to come up multiple times is this notion of voice and register. These are two ideas from linguistics. Voice is how you represent yourself and whose language you're using. Public audiences, when we do posters out in the visitor center of people's work here, audiences love to see data. They actually like to see the graphs and the photos and all that. When you talk like a scientist to them, they turn off immediately, right? So there's this sort of, my voice in this, who am I, and how do I present myself in the poster is really important. At a scientific conference, you need to be presenting yourself in a very particular kind of scientific register, a way of speaking that's appropriate to being a scientist. That is not the way you talk to your friends or family, obviously. If you did, they would stop listening to you. But the problem here is that everyday registers are actually much more communicative in general than scientific registers. Scientific registers are really good at giving details and qualifications. The average length of a sentence in a scientific journal is 42 words. The average length of a sentence in everyday life is 5 words, right? So sentences use lots of prepositional phrases in scientific journals. They use lots of qualifiers. Under these conditions, under that, blah, 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 blah. We decided that. We use lots of passive voice. Everything that we don't use in everyday communication, and things that usually get in the way of communication. They're there for very specific purposes. You can slip into using them or slip out of them using them without paying attention, and your poster can get really messy as a result. And so what you want to think about is being consistent across, or what I think about is probably the best idea, is to think carefully about how you use hybrid registers, how you use scientific language and everyday language in a principled way throughout your poster. So when you're writing a sentence and you want to use the common name of something, using common names versus scientific names, Latin names, is a good example here. And using one to introduce the other or bootstrap into the other is ideal. So using a common term or an everyday language or an analogy from everyday life to introduce a scientific concept and then work through that scientific concept in a more detailed way, that's better than simply jumping into the scientific concept. It's better even for other scientists, right? Even though they may not recognize or notice it, but especially at conferences where there's a larger audience than your small discipline, right? Because the language of your discipline is highly complex and belongs to your discipline. And other disciplines use it differently. And so to the extent that you can, when you're talking about national languages, we talk about code switching. To the extent that you can switch between Spanish and English, or between scientific ways of talking and everyday ways of talking in the poster, the more communicative it will be. But you don't want to just do it hodgepodge. How do you recognize them? Here's how you recognize them. Scientific registers use Latin root words. Why is that?
Standardized?
Yeah, it was part of standardizing a scientific language across multiple national languages. It really helps. It really does help. But we don't use those in most English everyday words come from Old English, not from Latin. The long sentences, like I talked about, this absolutely fantastic thing if you're a linguist called nominalizations, where you take a verb that describes a process and turn it into a noun, which encompasses a whole range of things by using this ending right here. So eutrophication, right? Gravitation. Any other examples of that from your own work? yeah. Liquefaction, right here in Hatfield, that's what we worry about. These words, if you talk to somebody with those words, they just gloss over, right? Because what they do is they take an entire theory of activity or a whole field of knowledge about something and smash it into one word. And for science, that's shortcutting. It works as long as everybody's talking the same language. As soon as you cross into a different world or a different type of language, then that kind of gets in the way more than anything else. So this is where those hybrid registers come in. This is where the sort of notion of dead zones, right? Dead zones, the everyday way of talking about eutrophication, right? So using those strategically to introduce, and then now the way I'm going to talk about that is this, and consistently throughout that. Jargon, you all have huge jargon in your work that you probably don't even recognize at this point because you're so immersed in it. So showing other people your text who aren't in your field and identifying jargon and then getting rid of it is important. And then acronyms. Ocean Sciences has more acronyms than anything I've ever been involved in my life. And you just have to avoid them. In posters, just avoid them if you can. They're just going to get in the way. Everyday speech doesn't use the passive voice. Everybody know what the passive voice is? It was discovered that instead of we found that, right? It's sort of using a to-be verb with a past tense of a verb and a non-subject at the beginning. It's very typical of scientific writing. It just creates long sentences, doesn't really do much else. So replacing that sort of passive voice with the active voice creates shorter sentences and puts these subjects of action at the beginnings of sentences instead of the ends. And then using analogies. Scientists don't like to use analogies because the analogy can be wrong in important ways, but they're crucial to understanding your work for people, even other experts. Right? Really finding the right analogies and then using them, whether they're visual or verbal. Yeah.
So you said avoid acronyms, but what about like if you're structuring up a name like Hatfield, HMSC, or last year I did a paper on a national marine monument, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with the name, but it's
so the one out Western Hawaii.
So I just did PMNM for over and over again in my paper. Is that something to try and avoid too?
It's better if you can avoid it, but for things that are just really long, it really does make it easier for the reader if you can do that. Make sure you define it right at the beginning, or even in other key locations. I think that's the key thing. So then another thing that I believe I remember learning in a different class is that you should reintroduce it in different sections of your. Yeah, I think that's really a really great idea. So if you're gonna come back to it in the conclusion, reintroduce it there, so that if somebody's not, and I'll give you an example why that's important here in a minute. If somebody's not looking at the whole thing, they're zeroed in on here, they'll still get it. Does everybody know what an analogy is?
Yeah. Okay,
great. And you can think about analogies visually. All right, so away from the kind of that stuff. Now let's talk about how you really think about what goes in the poster and how to start structuring it. And again, less is more here. And the way I think about this, the way I try to organize my own work now with posters and PowerPoints, by the way, is this. Really try to zero the poster in on one claim. You're not going to be able to present all your work in a poster and have it be sensible. And you saw that on some of the posters, which are presenting all kinds of data for all kinds of claims they're making. Try to identify one claim, one hypothesis that you're trying to answer, one idea, and then organize everything along that line. That gives you the ability to put 4, 5, or even 6 pieces of evidence in that back up that one idea, right? And that's really the way to think about this. It's almost like writing that 3-paragraph essay they taught you to do in English 101. There's sort of one big idea, and then give that idea away in the title, right? Hooking titles, cute titles, those are great, but make sure that whatever you found, whatever your big idea is, whatever your claim is actually given away in the title. Because 90% of the people who walk by your poster aren't going to read anything but the title, right? And they should be able to understand what you did and what you found right there. You'll see this in a lot of good scientific writing. I think that's one of the things we see that we don't see in social sciences and humanities, for instance, is that the titles of pieces very often are just what we found, right? This did that. This does that under these circumstances. And then the paper lays all that out, the evidence for that. That will really improve your poster because it helps you orient to what's important to keep in, but it also gives it away right up front. Makes it harder for people to not get the point. And then think about how you're going to support that. Online and talks and all kinds of places, a lot of people recommend limiting all the text on your poster to 250 words. I think that's almost undoable. But it's an interesting goal to shoot for, right? To think about if that's the kind of amount of text that somebody's really going to be able to make it through in the time that they have with me, how do I really deploy it most effectively? Most abstracts for journals are 250 to 300 words. So that's the length that people are thinking about here. I think that's not enough. I think you're going to need more than that in most posters to actually get any information across. Okay, now thinking about your big idea in those 4 to 6 pieces, and this is where I get the most pushback from people on this idea. And if you put together posters for your lab and you use this idea, somebody's going to push back and say, you can't do that. But you can. You don't have to stick with the super traditional headings of introduction, background, methodology, results, discussion. In fact, you could use those, because those are simply section headers or signposts. Right? Here's where you're going to find the data. Here's where you're going to find what I think about the data. Here's where you're going to find what I did. You can make better use of the space and communicate more if you use full sentences for those headers or phrases. So instead of saying something like background, you could actually say something like, previous studies show that, or previous studies are inconclusive, right? If somebody pushes back on you and says, well, you have to say background, then you can say background, previous studies are inconclusive. And again, in a minute you'll see, I think, why that's really important. But for one thing, what this does, human beings don't remember individual words very well. They don't remember bullet lists very well. They remember things in sentences. That's why language is structured that way, because our brains work that way. And so anything that you state in a sentence is automatically more memorable for a person than something that's just a disconnected list, right? And it uses that space. Otherwise, this is a lot of real estate on your poster that's just a signpost. So think about how you can say something interesting about that section or give away information rather than just use a word. You know, for results, actually tell what the results were. We found differences in behavior under 2 conditions.
No active voice.
Yes, use active voice, not passive voice. It was discovered that. Now here's the science behind all that. In research with people at conferences and research with people walking through airports and research with people in museums and in malls, these categories hold across. So any kind of sign or poster or informational placard, as they say on the airplane, will get attention in kind of 3 different levels. Most people are what we call browsers. These are the people who are literally walking past and are not going to stop. And they're basically going to read your title and nothing else, because they're not going to stop to see anything else. They should get the gist of your study right there. Give it away right there. The scanners are going to be at your poster for less than a minute, 40, 50 seconds, and all they're going to do is scan the titles and the headers. So if all your headers say is background results, they're going to know that you followed the scientific method of presenting data, but they're not going to know what you found, right? So if you can give away information in each of those headers, they'll get it. They'll get the story, and they'll get a little more detail than the browsers will. Readers are the people who are actually going to read it. That's your real audience. And those are the people who are going to read it and potentially interact with you about it. And these are your colleagues, your potential employers, your potential graduate students. That's the group you're after. They're the super minority in any kind of poster presentation context, right? The payoff should be the same for all these guys, for all these different readers. They should all get the gist of your study, what you found, how you found it, right? Everybody will know a little bit more as they go down and spend more time. But they should all, if you stopped them as they were leaving, they should all be able to say, oh yeah, he did this. He's doing this kind of work. He's doing that kind of work. So that at a conference, if somebody stops them and says, hey, did you see anything about blah, blah, blah? They can say, yeah, down that aisle right there is the guy who's doing blah, blah, blah. I didn't read the poster, but it's there. Any questions about that? Those types of readers? Yeah.
Anybody else first?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
How would you, I just couldn't really picture section headings that give away enough information to be useful to the scanners without being, like, super clunky. Do you have?
Yeah, no, I don't. And that's where the sort of thinking about how you can say it, write a sentence that uses these sort of everyday registers to do that, so make sure it's in the active voice, try to keep it short. Try to think about, the way I think about it is, try to think about it as you've got all this text in that section, so what? What's the so what that goes with that text? You finish reading it, so what? Well, it means this. Put that as the kind of section heading. That makes sense. That's the way I do it. That's what I teach my graduate students to do in terms of section headings, even for their dissertations. We read through a section and I say, okay, that's great. That's really interesting. So what? Literally ask if you can answer that question. That is the answer. That's the thing that goes in the heading. You could also say, and, and, what does that give you? What do I know from that? What do I learn from that?
Do you think graphics should be included in the scanners?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The scanners will absolutely look at good graphics. They absolutely do. And in fact, that will trump the heading, right? So if you've got good graphics in the middle, if you've got data that you want people to definitely see, the scanners will see it, especially if it's sort of central in the poster. There's a couple places that you can put it so people will see it. And good graphics can turn a browser into a scanner. That's what all visual marketing is about. How do you get a person walking from point A to point B to stop and read the sign? It's all about the graphics.
bit of a transition right now in the world of science, trying to get
I agree.
between that and the poster science, I guess I should say, poster science communication, where there are a lot of people that are still very comfortable with the traditional style and format, and they're just going to keep doing the introduction method no matter what. It doesn't matter how many times you tell them, they're always going to put 6,000 words on their poster. And, you know, I have to say, I'm to the students, I've said it once and I'll say it again, you're going to see one of my early posters and it's awful. It's terrible. It's going to be so great for you guys to check it out and see all the things that I am teaching you done wrong, because I totally did it wrong. It's very, I warned you guys, this is, you know, it's, you can't see yourself doing it wrong. But the point I was trying to make really is that because we're in this transition, I feel like most of us, we're almost trained to, you know, if we're at a poster session, we run through the posters quickly because there's 16 you want to go to, and even if you're like, ooh, that one's neat, and you kind of like quickly glance at it, and you're doing a browser or a scanner, I feel like it's almost like as a scanner, you're trained to use the signposts. I'm supposed to just quickly find that, oh, let me just quickly find the results, or I just want to really quickly scan through that conclusion, and so it's almost like you're throwing them off entirely. You're like, where is the conclusion? Oh, this poster's a message, just walk away. You know what I mean?
Yep, I do.
I'm not pushing back in the negative way. I think we should be moving forward. If the title grabs you, you should be willing to stand and at least read for 1 minute. And so those headers being creative sentences would be good. And I love the idea of it. But it's more almost like, you know, how do we convince the people that just want a signpost that it's worth reading the sentence? Yeah,
I'm not sure you can actually convince them, but this is where this sort of hybrid text comes back in. And that's why what I do on mine specifically is this. I actually say results, and then I put a colon and put that, or that, exactly, and then I put that statement. And that's exactly for that reason. There's another thing you can do though, and I'm going to show you, you'll see that in a second when we talk about the layout. We innately, as human beings, look for new information in a particular way. And you can actually leverage that, and as long as your results are in the place visually that people expect to see new information, that's probably going to help you more than anything else. Just put it there, and then people stumble across it without even thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to go on tangent or anything, but like I feel like we need, I don't know, at least for me, like I feel like I need that, and you said you can combine it, which is good, because like I can't imagine trying, and that's how like we start these things in literature review, and I can't imagine going through a literature review and not being like,
at least where's the section?
Like, it would just take what's wrong. So.
Yeah, and that's, again, think about the purpose of the poster, right, and its kind of trajectory path beyond you. And if it's something that is going to be published and indexed, and people need to be able to access the parts quickly via search, then you need these it's metadata, right? The subheadings become metadata, basically. And so you need to keep the kind of standard format for that. If it's a one-off science communication event at the Capitol in Salem, those things are just going to get in the way, right? So again, think about the audience and the need and your goal. And then I think that's the way to make that decision. You're not going to make the wrong decision here, right? I think the key is thinking about what parts of my scientific writing genre are going to help communicate in this context and get in the way in that context. And one poster is not going to do double duty usually very well, although we try that all the time. People call you and say, "Hey, have you got anything on your rig?" Say, "Yeah, I got a poster you guys can hang up in the classroom." All right, here's some concrete things about the visual look. You guys have this recorded, but I can also send you the PowerPoint if you want to review these details.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Know the difference between a serif and a sans serif font. Does everybody know that difference?
I told you this the other day.
Yeah, great, excellent, we're there. Here's serifs, these little clicky things. The reason those are important, we've known this for 100 years, but eye tracking research demonstrates, I've done this research myself, that an expert reader doesn't actually read this left to right like we're taught to read. We actually jump all over a sentence or all over a paragraph or page, and we catch these little things in the and we see the beginnings of words and the ends, and we interpolate what the word is. We see the beginnings of sentences and the ends, and we interpolate what the sentence is. We do that all the time. That's how those funny things you get on the internet at work that have a bunch of misspellings or mistypings in them, and you don't see them the first time you read it. That's how that works. The problem is, as a text gets bigger, then those things actually start to slow down your reading. They actually get in the way and fatigue the reader. So as text gets bigger, you want to go from serif fonts to sans serif fonts, cleaner looking fonts. As it gets smaller, you need the serifs to actually help the reader. And so that's kind of that's how I've sort of organized this. Titles on posters, now the range is huge here because the poster sizes are all different, and it's partially an issue of being kind of relative size as you go down. But the title can be big. Think 72 to 120 font. On your PowerPoint screen when you make this, it's going to look overwhelmingly big. But when it's actually printed, it's probably going to look normal. From across the room, it will definitely look normal. And so this kind of 72 to 100 font, pretty heavy font, these are the ones that I recommend. This comes from a lot of work on visual communication. The ones that are kind of easily available in things like PowerPoint. Think about the subtitles as being the same. Keep the same font. Don't mess around with lots of different fonts in an image. You guys pointed that out already. That's bad. Keep the same font, but drop down to about 48 to 80 points. Section headers the same, but 36 to 72. And then body text, choose one of these serif fonts, and 24 to 48. If you get much below 24, it gets really hard to read at that sort of distance that people stand at a conference from your poster, which is about like that. When you do, please always use acknowledgments, photo credits, things like that, even if it's your own photo or references. But those can be 10 or 11, 12 point font, because the only people who are going to care about those are the readers, the ones who actually stop and read the poster, and yeah, they're going to get close enough to see it, or the people who are doing similar work and they want to write it down and take it with them. So those can be really small. Any questions about that? That's pretty straightforward.
Want to cover color on this slide?
I don't have a lot to say about color, except that I would treat color in a similar kind of organized way. The problem, and you guys pointed this out in a couple of those posters, the problem arises when you just have when you have a mess of colors, so you have more than 3 or 4 colors. 3 or 4 colors is kind of typical for design of any kind of visual, right? 3 or 4 good colors, all roughly the same hue, is what really gives you, and then you can pop with one of them. That's the idea, right?
Picking one color for serif and one for non-serif.
Absolutely. That kind of thing, that's the way I would think about it, is think about using the color to communicate. So one color for this kind of stuff, one color here. You can use color pretty effectively to make the distinction between subtitles and sections or across the sections of a poster, but it does get a little bit noisy at a certain point. You should also think about, do I have a slide on this? I think I do, just briefly touch on this. 2 problems with colors. One is we, as a species, tend to oversee yellow. And so this is a problem for those of you who use those nice color ramps that go from kind of a red to a purple through yellow. When human beings see those color ramps or see yellow, they tend to overestimate how much of it there is. And so we tend to overestimate the mid-range of things that are color-coded with yellow in the middle all the time. Scientists do it, everybody does it, because we see yellow really well, and it just drowns out other colors. And so if you want something to pop, yellow is your friend, but if you need it to be, but use it sparingly, I guess that's the word. Also remember that 20% of males in the U.S. are colorblind. And males are highly overrepresented in the marine and ocean sciences. And so we have a basic color blindness problem in oceanography, anyway, that sometimes color gets in the way. And so think carefully, again, about how you use blues and reds to communicate, because they may not be visible to a big chunk of your audience. Speaking of color, this is our research. This is a bunch of our research. We have an eye tracker over in the office, and so this thing, you hook up people's either on the computer or literally to a pair of glasses, and you can track where their eyes go and how long they stay. These are across eye tracking research. There's these kind of there's these kind of standard search patterns that human beings engage in. And so one of them is this kind of F. So you can see it here, this is a couple of dozen people looking at this visual data. And you can see that where it's hot white, they spend the most time looking. The darker is the least time looking, and over here is no time looking. And so you can see that their eyes rest and stop in these places in exactly this F pattern, which people also use to search visual stuff online, and you see that leveraged in how online search platforms deliver information. They actually use this structure. The other very common structure is this. It's kind of a Z. Experts in a field in particular tend not to do this when they look at data. They tend to do this when they look at data. And they tend to look in very principled ways. So if you turn a non-expert loose with this data, that's what these are over here as non-experts, you see that they spend a lot of time kind of looking at the title, at the measurement bar, and then right in the middle of the image, where they're not going to learn anything from this particular data set by looking at the middle part of the image. And you can see that what an expert does is kind of spend a lot of time double checking what's up here and then looking in very specific regions for particular things. They're making a hypothesis about what they should see and then looking for it. Right? So an oceanographer looks at sea surface temperature data in a very principled way, as opposed to a non-expert who looks at it and says, I don't even know what this is, trying to figure this out. But they both use this kind of either an F search, visual search pattern, or a Z visual search pattern. And part of the reason that's true is because as a species, again, we tend to look on the left for given information and on the right for new information. And I'm not sure why that is, but it is culturally universal. So it's not how you learn. It doesn't matter which way your script goes.
Oh, that's
right? This is about visual searching in nature, I guess, at some point. But we have this sort of default to look for things we already know over here. And so you can see that experts assume they know all this stuff and even look at the color ramp marker to figure out what's going on. And they read the title, they got it, I got it, right? They do spend more time at the front part of the title than the end, and then they zip down into looking for the new information here and here. And so they make this kind of Z pattern. That's why this kind of space down here is not very good for things, because nobody's actually looking down in this corner. They're looking for new information up here. But this is where we always put our results and conclusions. Right? So think about that. If you flipped your results up there and your conclusions up there, or what a great person I am for figuring this out up there, that's what people are going to remember as the takeaway. This area down here is kind of dead space for all search patterns.
So what do you suggest we do include in that area?
This is where your acknowledgments and your funding information or your references should go. Okay. The other hot spot for that is kind of right in the middle at the bottom, because there's just not much going on there visually either for people. But save that, and yeah, I'll show you this thing. Save that one big chunk of real estate up there in that right-hand corner for what's really important. Whether if it's a particular piece of evidence or data or a graph that you really want to draw attention to, your two best places for that are going to be in that corner and right smack in the middle. And unfortunately, a lot of people, when they put their posters together, they spend a lot of time talking about their methodology right here in the middle, and that's usually given information for people, not new information. Photos don't speak for themselves, and so this is visual also. No data speaks for itself. It always has to be contextualized to make sense to people. So these are photos from my work. What's important for you to see in those photos? People. Yet no. I use these posters to talk about how we do our work. These people as focal people in the research, these other people I don't care about. Well, I care about them as people, but not as research subjects. And then you can see that she's wearing a recorder, and she's wearing a lapel mic, so we can hear what they're saying. So this is about methodology for me. There's a lapel mic. Simply putting a circle on top of the photo draws your attention to what's important to see. I know what's important to see in my data. You don't know what's important to see in my data unless I draw your attention to it. All data is like that. Same thing here. There's the armband. There's me. I'm collecting data out of this crowd. Do the same with charts and graphs. This is the worst. And these are thanks to Jan, my colleague Jan down at OMB. This is stuff from an actual poster presentation here at Hatfield. Let me back up. What's that figure tell you? Yeah, something is declining. This is the key takeaway from this.
Yeah.
And what about this one down here? What's this one tell you?
A decline.
There's a pattern.
Something else is declining. Yeah, so this on a poster is almost useless. And it does have these things. Oh, by the way, this is figure 1 and figure 1. So, I mean, there's already a cut and paste problem here, right? Somebody has cut two things out of PDFs, dropped them into their poster as evidence. It's almost impossible to figure out for what without talking to them. So what we do with these kinds of things is like this. You can do it in a PowerPoint. You can do it in a poster section. Label everything and use visual cues. So the first thing we do is we turn this into a statement, a claim for the section on results, right? We have the researcher has a junk food hypothesis. Decline in the weight of sprats is mirrored by a decline in the common muir chick weight. That's pretty straightforward. Here's my 2 pieces of evidence for that. The weight of 20-day-old common muir chicks is declining, and just in case you're not going to interpret that right, I'm telling you how to interpret right on the image. I'm not leaving it up to you to figure it out. This is how I interpret this data. By the way, there's this weird number on the bottom, which I had to call the guy who made the original thing and say, what the hell is that number at the bottom? It's not even labeled in the publication that came out, right? There's nothing that would indicate that's the sample size, but that's the sample size. And then we just make this explicit. We also then make this explicit. Sprat weight is also declining because that's the second half of the hypothesis. It's the second piece of evidence. But this data was taken from a much longer period than this data, so we've also labeled that and said here. And we've actually put the line in. Just in case you're not sure what a muir chick is or what a sprat is, we've also labeled that. Put in a photo and labeled that. So this is the kind of section now that contains a huge amount of information with very few words, right? All visually. So this is to me, this is an ideal results section right here, because it puts the data, the evidence that you need to understand the poster and the point of the poster, but it also tells you how to understand it and what's important in it, literally by labeling it, and then it puts a context on it. If you can do that for each section of your poster or each piece of evidence, you're golden, because then if somebody walks up and all they do is look at that results section, they understand everything about your poster right there. And everything else is kind of icing on the cake. This is another example. This is taken from a PowerPoint slide, but it gets the same point. You guys don't use this kind of data. This is the worst visual data I've ever seen in my life. This is a NOAA visualization of data. Anybody tell what's going on there? It's already been labeled. I labeled it already. Yeah, this is anomaly data. Okay, so we got that. It's sea surface data. Even figuring this out, this turns out to be time running in this direction, and this turns out to be longitude here, right? So this is just weird. And so there's a NOAA scientist standing up here talking about what this means, and everybody in the room going, trying to figure out how to see what this person sees in it. That's the key. Your data probably doesn't look like that. It's nowhere near that weird and complicated looking, but for somebody it is. Other people can't see what you see in it unless you label it. And so I've labeled it. Negative sea surface temperature anomalies in the central and east central Pacific Ocean have been in place for this amount of time. Here's a negative sea surface anomaly. Now you can track back and see it. What's that mean? Anybody know what that means? Of course you don't know what it means unless somebody tells you what it means, because you're not a NOAA atmospheric scientist. I wasn't either. I'm not. That means that we're going to have an El Nino. Right? That's the evidence for El Nino. And so here's more examples of that. But the point is, again, no matter how simple or complex you think your data is, your audience probably can't see what you see in it until you label it very explicitly and clearly.
That would be good after an animation presentation like this, not on a poster.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I came back to this one just to reinforce this notion that there's actually a lot I like about this poster. I think they've actually done a really good job of labeling kind of clearly what the data is and what it means and how it's related to their bigger picture. And I think that visually that really works. I also like this because you kind of got this tagline. They use this sort of bottom part here where there's not much else to say for a tagline, and that's kind of cool because that's kind of a nice so what for the whole thing, right? What I don't think works quite as well is that this big circle, while it's highly appealing, is a little hard to zero in on where's the new information and the given information. Where's the methods? Where's this other stuff?
That's for browsers.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a good poster for readers, right? But I don't think it works as well for browsers. I think that's the last. Oh yeah. So here's a couple of other just resources. One thing I didn't talk about so much is this idea that and then when I talk about PowerPoint presentations, I talk about this. You're the presentation at a conference, at a talk. It's really you, and the poster or the PowerPoint backs you up, right? That's really the point, because you can arrive at the conference and your luggage got lost and you don't have your poster, but you still have to stand there and talk about your work, even if you just have to write it down on pieces of paper and stick it up on the wall. You can get there and your PowerPoint doesn't work. And I have been at more than one conference where the winning presentation for the award for best presentation came to somebody whose PowerPoint didn't work. And they never got to show their visuals because they were able to talk about it in a compelling way. So that really is crucial to think about how you present it. And don't let the poster do all the work, but offload the kind of, offload onto the poster what it can really do well, which is visually orient people in your work and give a little bit of context for that work. Right? That's really what it does well. It doesn't actually communicate everything you do very well. And so Colin Purrington has some really great ideas about that. He's at PSU, Penn State, and they also have a lot of templates on that website for posters that are quite good and a lot of hints and tips. There's also a great site for scientific poster writing at Berkeley that has a lot of what I've talked about and some of the other kind of detailed things about natural science posters. If you're working on or thinking about how you can make your visualizations, your data more accessible to a wider range of people, this guy Colin Ware, you should look at his books, his website, information. He's a ocean-focused researcher, but he does work on visual perception. So it's really work about how do we see the world and how do we leverage that again to make better visuals of data.
Tufte.
Edward Tufte is another great thinker in this area, and Tufte kind of comes more from the mathematics side, which is data is beautiful. So how can you really make your data beautiful and compelling and communicative? Colin Ware comes more from the cognitive psychology side of that and says, how did we evolve and what do you need to know about that or culturally? Because colors, fonts, all that stuff have cultural meanings as well, and that's something else you can leverage, or if you ignore it, it can get you into trouble. All right, any other questions, comments? I will make the presentation available to you guys through Scarlett, so you can look at the detailed stuff on there. And I'm always glad to answer questions via email. But anything else before we get out of here?
I had a quick question for you. So you had a really great comment about, the good graphic can really convert that scanner who's just going to give you 2 seconds, 10-second glance to the reader, which I think is really great and valuable for new students to kind of get that idea. We can pull someone in or make them stop and look a little, give them a second glance, give a second look in that way. But then I'm kind of wondering, how do we convert the scanners to the readers? Because that round poster, it's kind of like itself is like graphic. It's so different that people go, oh, let me look at that one again, and that makes them the scanner. But then how do we get them to be the reader? Because that's what we really need for that poster. It's not going to help scanners, or it's not going to do that well on that. We need readers. Any advice?
I have sort of two comments. The first is a good visual is built, not just taken. Your phone, probably all of you have a phone that you take a photo and then you can see it, but then it probably also has, Google probably goes through and gives you a nicer version of it. I don't know if most phones do that. So I get every once in a while a phone tells me we have here's a better version of the photo you took because they run it through some filters or run something, right? Oh, that really is better. I think the point is, even a photograph is not a good visual unless you've done some processing and thinking about it. And a visual like this is just built up out of lots of different components, and most good visuals are built up out of multiple components, not just a snapshot or a table or something imported directly, right? Does that make sense? They kind of deconstruct it. And so think about that, and think about how you can construct a visual rather than just what can I cut and paste in here that's going to do the job for me. And you all mentioned that on the photographs that you saw in the poster that I started with. So why is that there? What is that? I like that, but it's kind of grainy. Right? That's because they were just literally probably picked up off the web and stuck on the poster as opposed to being restructured in some way. And it doesn't mean you have to do a huge amount of work. This is literally done in PowerPoint right here, just dropping using all those tools in PowerPoint. So the second piece is about the kind of getting a scanner to become a reader. And so I guess my feeling about that is that that's where your content and your charisma come in. That is, if your content is really interesting and the scanner suddenly sees it as relevant to them or interesting to them, they will stop and take a second look, right, or a third look. And so that's a little hard to predict unless you know something about the audience you're thinking about. That's why you sort of start from that backwards design idea. And relevance, so this comes from another whole body of work that we do. Relevance turns out to be the kind of filter that people use for almost everything. Is this relevant to me right now? And so thinking about what makes your work or your findings relevant to the potential audience and making that explicit in those headers and subheaders is part of what would transfer somebody from that scanning mode to that reading mode. They suddenly say, this is going to help me, or this is interesting, or this is relevant to me right now. And that's a little hard to know just off the top of your head, because that's where talking to your lab mates, your colleagues, your friends can sort of help that. The more you talk about what it is you do and sort of see where it is people catch onto it, want to know more, and where they gloss over it, where to get a drink, that's your sweet spot right there. But I think that's in the content. That's really, I get excited about some of the content posters here that I can't understand the science at all. And some of the stuff that goes on here. But the content is interesting enough and seems relevant enough for me to jump in and spend some time with it. I've learned so much about ocean acidification that way. Right, finding from people who can actually communicate it and sort of say, yeah, now I understand why that's important now, even though I'm not sure exactly how you do your essay and all that work. Probably not the only way to do it. Yeah, your charisma is the other thing. So that, standing back at your poster like this with your hands in your pockets isn't going to make you any friends. But being out and sort of being out and ready to answer questions, not being pushy, nobody likes a pushy salesperson, right? But that's sort of, hey, if you have any questions, let me know. There's an abstract, I print the abstract and bring it with me, or little copies of the poster, or even in your card. If you want to know more for you can take one of these. And people pick those things up like crazy. Just a little abstract with a copy of your poster on the back and your contact information on the front, especially if you're looking for a job. That's kind of ideal. Because they can look at it quickly and they can take that with them and either read it or pass it on to somebody else to read or leave it somewhere where somebody else reads something. It's sort of raw detail journalism, but it can make a difference.
Closer to the actual session, but I would find that asking questions sometimes. That's more engaging. I'm asking my questions. I'm not very doing their what are you asking? Like they actually will at least respond, which starts the engagement. So instead of being pushy and saying, I don't know, what do you know about this? Or, are you interested in plastics in the ocean? Or something to kind of get them started in that conversation. My help, at least show you're very present as opposed to, hey, cell phone or something.
Think about the people who are really good at getting your signature on a ballot. Don't be careful.
If you're not presenting at a conference or something, it's do that kind of presentation anyway, in case someone does pop out.
Yeah.
It really helps your visibility. They say, oh, this is canceled, and you have a presentation and fit right in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that happens all the time. You can't make it for whatever reason. Absolutely. I'm working on this area. Absolutely. Other questions, comments?
Any questions from Ash?
Yes?
But anything, you can email me or send on me. I also offer, I don't always have a lot of time at the end of the term, but if you want, somebody lately goes for me or somebody in my lab, you can always send them all when you get closer to that point. And I can't guarantee you'll be able to turn around back to you in the time needed, but try. And these are some quick feedback.
If anyone is going to do that, I highly recommend you send it with a specific question.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about this color scheme? A little unsure of it. Or what do you think about this structure? Am I trying to do what you showed us?
That'd be super helpful, and I'd love to know that I can answer my phone.
Much better than check my poster. What do you think of this?
That's true.
Fraud, you know, get 100 things back. And there's one or 2 points back.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Great, and like I got yours.
So it's like the wheel.
Yeah. Remember, our I'm hoping to invite all the people that we talked to that first week. So there'll be people who think they're not I'm not sure who all this is, but by all means, I think it'd be a broader audience than just HMSC scientists.
Yeah. The thing about this, and one piece of advice for doing this, I do this is I can make a concept map on a piece of paper. These are the things I'm going to talk about. This is the same thing I'm going to talk about. And here's the kind of pieces of evidence line up. And then for each one of those, I say, what's the best way to communicate that piece of evidence to a broad audience, not my peers. I know I'm not going to do that in my sleep. But to the audience I know is going to be there, to other students, to management people, to faculty, people outside of those disciplines. Really think about what are they going to know about this and not know about that. And that quick 10-minute exercise really give you kind of lay out what the thing might look like on that audience.
That's definitely awesome.
I'm going to give a talk on that. You talked about Jessica, and I'm going to talk about that process itself to Jessica, and it's just another class down here in November.
All right, well, maybe we'll try to piggyback on that.
Great. Well, thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.